Okay. You should see a little button saying that recording has started. Can I verify that that's happened for folks? Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to do quite a bit of talking, um, but I really do encourage you, if you have any questions at any point in time, you can raise your hand or bring yourself off of mute and ask that question. While I am the program coordinator here at OFN, my colleague Emily Hartleroad has been here for well over a decade and knows this program in more depth than I do. So if there's any questions I can't answer today for you, then I'll make sure to bring those questions to Emily and we'll get back to you within the day. So let's just start with an overview of where we're going to be going today in our conversation. We've completed our introductions. I'll give you a little overview of what the TAP program is, its history. We'll walk through the important sections of the guidelines and application, and also the evaluation criteria form. And then I'll leave a little room at the end, hopefully at least 10 minutes or so for us to go through any questions you might have that didn't come up during our chat. So I'll just kind of give you a brief overview of what the TAP or Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program is. It's a program that's run through, oh, I'm going to add, there's one more person trying to come in. Hi, Sweta, nice to see you this morning. We're just getting started, so let me know if you have any questions as we get going. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly to the group?
Hi, uh, my name is Shweta, and I am a practitioner of Indian classical dance called Bharatanatyam, and I live in Beaverton, Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, yeah, so the TAP has a federally and state funded program that funds traditional arts or art forms that are passed from one person to another that are within the same cultural group. And OFN is the administrator of this program, but we're kind of the middle person. The funding comes through state and national organizations, and then we help find folks and you all apply and we administer the program. We've hosted this program since 2012. We've worked with dozens of mentors and apprentices over the years. Typically, one mentor applies with one apprentice. Occasionally, there's more than one apprentice that a mentor will select to work with. So I'll go over a couple of exceptions as far as how you might fill out your application if you have more than one person who's an apprentice. And this year we will administer four awards that go, so one award per mentor apprentice team, and each award will be $3,500. Um, so we're here really to help you create the best possible application. Myself and my colleague Emily will not be part of the review panel who are reviewing the application. We're really here as your supporter because we know what the panel is going to be looking for. We want to make sure that you're putting in an application that's as strong as possible. So we really encourage you to ask us any questions and lean on us as you're going through this process. So the different ways that we offer support would be you can have a phone call with us as you're thinking through what your project is going to be. We know that there's quite a bit of writing that we're asking folks to do when filling out this application. Not everyone has English as their first language, and not everyone who's a native English speaker is very comfortable writing that much. So if that's the case, you can request that we have a phone call or a Zoom together, and we'll record as you speak to us so that you don't have to go through all of the work of typing that yourself. So if that's something you're interested in, please do let us know. And the third thing that we do is that if you submit your entire application or a portion of your application early, we'll review that, we'll provide feedback, and hopefully that feedback will help strengthen your application. Are there any questions just about the TAP program in general or Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question about the last thing you said. So when do we have to give you the application to get feedback?
Feedback. We prefer to have at least a week. But we ask folks mid-September if possible, but we know that, time's coming, it's moving fast. But at least 1 week before the end of the month so that we can review it and then you can have enough time to do what you need to do to submit it. Thank you for asking that question.
And what's the email ID that we need to send that to?
Yeah, the email would be ofn@uoregon.edu, and that email will be listed at the end of this presentation as well. Okay. So I'm going to go open the guidelines document. I really encourage everyone here to review the guidelines document before completing the application. The way to find that document is by visiting our website. Um, it should look something like this if you Google Oregon Folklife Network. We're a sub-program of the Museum of Natural and Cultural History, which is why you see that on the left. Um, we're under the tab Folklife, and under our programs section, the Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program is the first one that shows up. This is maybe also interesting for you to kind of poke around on this page because we have all of our past TAP Award recipients listed. And we have last year's TAP awardees listed in more detail. A good portion of those individuals have videos that videographer we worked with completed of them in their work. So if you're interested in learning about what others have done, that's a really great repository of information to reference. But where we're going to go is apply for TAP award. And there's information listed here that I encourage you to read. And if you want to access either the guidelines or the application, you can click on either of these buttons. If you're not familiar with Adobe Acrobat, I'll just show you briefly how you can access the download feature, which is hiding in these tiny three little bullet points here. You'll click on that and you'll have the option to download this file. You can also reference and review the entire file sitting here in the reader if you want as well. So, and additionally, if you want a Word document version of the application document, just email the same email that I mentioned, ofn@uoregon.edu. You can use that instead of a PDF. So once you've got your guidelines open, I'm just going to briefly review our eligibility requirements because these are, don't walk any further or sit in this Zoom room any further if you don't meet these eligibility pieces. So at least one person in the mentor/apprentice pair needs to demonstrate permanent residence in the state of Oregon. That could be either person. So we've had individuals whose mentors who are apprentices who live in Oregon, but their mentors live in Washington State because they're fairly close over on the other side of the river. Um, but yes, we do ask that at least one person is a permanent resident. And then the second piece is that both mentor and apprentices are required to be from the same cultural community, and that it could be defined as ethnic, occupational, sacred, or regional. It kind of depends on what your tradition or your art form is. If you have any questions, I can follow up with you after this. And thirdly, a cultural appropriation is not eligible for TAP. So for instance, like I'm a person of Welsh descent. I am very curious about how Indian dance and practices work, but if I were to show up as a practitioner of Indian dance, that wouldn't be an appropriate project for this program because I would need to originate from that same cultural heritage. If there's any questions you have about that, sometimes we need to kind of talk through how that works. And then fourth, if you are someone who's received an award previously, you can apply again, but you can't apply and receive the award 2 years in a row. Um, and similarly, if you have a spouse or someone else who's in your household who received the award last year, you wouldn't be able to receive the award again this year. And I would also be happy to talk through that particular case with anyone if you want. And we do ask before you start filling out an application, if you have a mentor or if you have an apprentice who's under 18, if you talk to us, because our review panels really they're very scrutinous, and they're looking for demonstration of apprentices who are really ready and able to participate as apprentices. And we've had issues in the past where youth aren't just through represented strongly enough in applications. So we want to make sure that you have what resources you need to make sure that you present a strong application with a youth applicant. Similarly, if you are within the same family, like if you're a father who's mentoring your daughter, we do ask that you talk to us first, because we would like to hear a little bit about why this opportunity is necessary in order for you to spend that extra time together. Are there any questions about eligibility before I move on more into just general application materials? Okay. Um, and before we do that, the timeline for the program is also in the guidelines document. October 1st is our application deadline. Around the end of November is when our panel reviews the applications, and by early January, usually just after the start of the year, we'll be contacting everyone whether or not you received an award. And if you do receive an award, we'll begin the process of starting your contract. And by February, everything is official, and you're good to start. And you'll have until October, sometimes November, to complete your entire project, including the required public presentation portion. Um, and that's just so that we have enough time to turn around and pay you your second installment of the award by the end of the year. So I'm going to move over to our application. Okay. So we are aware that this is a long application. This is feedback we've received, and we're working not this year, but in years in the future to make sure, hopefully, to pare it down a little bit. So let us know if there's any accessibility issues because of the length of this application. This first section, we just ask that you enter your demographic information. The contact information in particular is quite important. And it is required that both mentor and apprentice, potentially a legal guardian, needs to sign indicating that everything to the best of your knowledge is true within this document. And then the kind of where you're going to spend the most time is in this written response section, section 2. And so there's two separate sections for written response. As you can see on the screen here, this is the mentor written response section. And then the next page is the apprentice written response. You'll notice that the mentor written response section is lengthy in comparison to the apprentice. And this is because we anticipate and expect that the mentor has more longevity with the tradition, with the art form, can speak more in depth to how the culture and the community supports their work, and also why it's important to be working with the apprentice that they're working with at this point in time. So they're going to be spending more time on this. So the important thing to know about how this is set up is that we ask you to consider each question, but answer every bullet point, because each bullet point directly correlates to review criteria and the evaluation form, which we'll see in a moment. So you don't have to answer, super long answers. We ask you to be clear and that you answer each bullet point. That's really important to scoring well. And we offer these guidelines for up to 1 page or half a page, but you're not required to go all the way up there. If you feel like you've answered a clear answer, then you're just fine with that. So, um, and I encourage you if you've already reviewed this, or if you have any specific questions about particular bullet points, you can ask me in a follow-up, but I'm not going to go into each bullet point. Go ahead.
So, this one page, you said we can have lesser than that, but definitely not more than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you go a little over, that's fine. But I think it's really just so that when the review panel is going through your materials, they don't feel like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I'm reading a
yeah,
novel, even though we love everything you have to share about what you're
yeah.
doing. Yeah,
So, and this one page is in Times New Roman 12 point and double spaced.
yeah, and
Okay,
and
okay.
once again, like if you wanted to change that to 1.5, that's fine if you need a little extra room. But yeah, thank you. And then I'll move over to the apprentice side so that we can kind of see here too. Um, so the other thing I will say is that when answering these questions, assume that you have advocates in the room who are on the panel. You don't need to demonstrate your broad needs or like why, in general, it's really important because I'm from a marginalized community, X, Y, and Z. We know that a lot of folks are coming from very specific small cultural groups. You have advocates. You can speak to that a little bit if you want to, but the main purpose of this application is to talk about this specific project that you're doing and that project's cultural significance to your community. Um, I hope that that makes sense. And then for this apprentice section, if you have an apprentice who's under the age of 18, they themselves are encouraged to write as much as they can in response to these questions, but they can also be supplemented by a guardian or their mentor in answering these questions so that they can be as robust as possible. We have had apprentices as young as 8 complete this section, and an 8-year-old's ability to write robustly is a little different than someone who's 16 or 18. So we just want to make sure that they're given equitable opportunity to present themselves well. Um, and then if you have more than one apprentice, we ask that each person fills out this section independently. Similarly, we'll see with the work samples and with letters of support, we ask that there's at least one representative for each individual. So you shouldn't be focusing entirely on one person and have like Galen sitting over on the side, without his demonstration as well. So yeah, so that's written response. Then we have our project plan section, which is a little abbreviated compared to years past. If you've applied with us before, we ask you to answer these 3 questions and then review and check, agreeing that you've read and agree to these points here. Um, we just are trying to really what this section is about is you being able to articulate to the panel what your plan is. We hope that you have a very clear idea of what you're doing for yourself. And we don't need to go into, and every Tuesday at 5:30, I'm gonna, sit down and do this one thing. And you can go there if you want to with that level of detail, but it's not required. And I will say, like, if the place to go into detail a little bit is with this work plan, lesson plan, really consider like the structure of your project and how you're planning on accomplishing that. I will say that we often have applicants who set overly ambitious projects. We're not asking you to start from the very beginning, and cover the entire tradition or art form and end up as a master at the end. Like that's really not the goal. The goal is so that a mentor and an apprentice can have dedicated time to work on an agreed skill. So for instance, we have a Ukrainian weaver whose name is Tatiana Horner, who was an awardee last year, and she and her apprentice, also named Tatiana, were focused really just on learning how to set the loom. That was the whole point of their entire apprenticeship, is just learning how to prepare the loom so that they can weave, because it's a very intricate process in and of itself. It wouldn't be appropriate for them with their art form to set the loom to complete a 5 foot, weaving piece and then take it off the loom and know how to, prepare it to sell or to give to a family member. So really consider your art form and your tradition and what is scalably an appropriate project for this 9-month period, knowing that life comes in the way sometimes. Oregon Folklife Network is not going to be checking in to make sure that you're doing everything that you said you were going to do on your project plan. This is really just an agreement for you between your apprentice or your mentor. And if it needs to adjust, that's fine. We're just looking to know if you have a general idea at this moment and that you can demonstrate your capability to complete a 9-month project. Are there any questions about the project plan section? Okay. Then we have our work samples. So we ask our mentor to supply at least 3 work samples and our apprentices at least 2 work samples. And this can be like a video, it can be photos, it can be written word. There's a lot of different media options. And so if you have any questions about the most appropriate format to submit your content, let us know. Oftentimes when people submit their application via email, they'll just add extra attachments with their work samples. Some folks prefer to submit their applications via mail, and so we would just ask that you print anything or include like a CD or a DVD, extra materials if you want with that. And then this is the letters of support, and we asked mentors to supply 2 letters of kind of reference or support specifically talking about them. And then we ask a letter of support specifically talking about the apprentice. And these, the notes to hear with this is that the purpose of these letters of support, and in this order, is so that this person can demonstrate your ties to your cultural community and vet the fact that, you're supported by your community, you're known by your community. When you receive this award, it shouldn't be surprising to others in your community that this is, that your name's out there and they're like, oh, whoa, I never even knew about that person. You should be entrenched enough in your community that they'll be like, yeah, yeah, um, yeah, it makes sense. And these letters of support can kind of demonstrate that. They should also demonstrate your readiness to complete this project, your character, and then your depth of skill and mastery with this tradition and art form. So all 4 of those are important, but really being able to uplift you as a part of your cultural community is the most important piece. And it's also very important, for these other reasons. But I think we just wanted to make sure that you know that in regards to how the review criteria play out. So, and then there's a couple of little sections back here where you need to sign and date. Um, and if you choose not to give permission for any of your work samples to be used in an online or printed way, then you just need to check this, which is fine. But we do require everybody to, the person who is receiving the funds. So we can talk further. Sometimes apprentices receive the funds instead of the mentor. There's usually just one individual who receives the money, but that person needs to sign this section here. And we have this assumption of risk form that has to do with youth who are participating in the program. And then this very helpful application checklist for this very long application, just to make sure that you've got all the pieces and components that you need. Um, yeah, so now I'm gonna pause for any questions about the application in general, and then I'll review the guidelines and open up the floor for general questions.
I have a quick question um, about I forget the full name, but the letter, just to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, letters of support. So I'm just curious, can that be like anybody within that community? It doesn't have to be like someone in a teacher role.
Yeah, yeah. Folks often choose elders or folks who are in teacher roles. However, if there's someone who's within your community and knows about the work that you do and can speak to the quality of that and your character, then that's just fine as well. Yeah.
Great. I was mostly asking because there's like a lot of people in the kind of Irish diaspora community in Portland that we've studied with and like um yeah, done singing events with,
Yeah.
and some of those are elders and some of them are our age, but Brian is like the only teacher we've had, and I figured it probably wouldn't be him since he would be our mentor. He probably shouldn't be the letter person, right?
Yes,
I'm
that is correct. Yeah.
okay.
But yeah, so it's not required that this person is elder to you. If you consider the fact that a lot of our folks applying are elders themselves, oftentimes
Yeah.
your predecessors have since passed. So just someone who's representative of your community who knows you and your work well would be great. Yeah, of
Thank you for clarifying.
course. So I'll go through the guidelines here briefly, which those are going to be at the end of your big guidelines packet, the evaluation criteria. So this is a little different than years past. There's a total of 50 points that span 6 categories. And I should let you know that the point of your application isn't to accumulate as many points as possible. Um, it's really rare that someone has all 50 points. So don't feel like this is a test that you're trying to score an A+ on. That's okay. Just know that most people don't have that going on. And each of these boxes here is related to or correlates with one of the bullet points on the sub bullet points on the questions in the written response section, and then also referencing like the supplemental materials like your work samples, your letters of recommendation further enhance the idea that, like, for example, the mentor is committed to artistic excellence. So the traditionality, cultural significance portion is really just, um, you understand the culture that this art form originates from, you understand the art form, its history, you articulate that clearly. If you do that well and clearly, you'll be given 5 points. Um, both the mentor and apprentice need to demonstrate um, commitment to artistic excellence. So we don't necessarily expect both folks to be the utmost masters of all time. But they've demonstrated a commitment to this life path, and that this is something that, you're pursuing with attention to detail, with understanding the cultural significance behind that. Um, the community relationship portion, which I was talking about with the letters of support, is the idea that your cultural community uplifts you and understands that this is something that you do, and the work that you're doing further impacts and brings goodness back to them in some way, shape, or form. And then this need and urgency section is one I wanted to spend some more time on, because there's, as you can see, like a total of 20 potential points. So for each bit that applies here, you get an additional 5 points. It's really rare that an applicant demonstrates all four of these things. That's okay. Please be judicious when when demonstrating your need and urgency. So like, for example, clear risk of the art form being lost, like if this art form is related to language and the language itself is about to die, that might demonstrate more need than an art form that's robust and there's millions of people practicing this across the world. The timing of this apprenticeship is urgent to the cultural community that you're within. The timing or funding of this apprenticeship is urgent to the mentor. Let's say your mentor or you're someone who is a mentor is an elder and they know that they have only so much time left to impart their knowledge. And similarly with the apprentice, if there's certain urgency, if they're at a very pivotal point in their development as an apprentice, or if there's like a time where you're going to be going across a benchmark within your cultural community and like it needs to happen this year so that you can be ready for that benchmark. Those are just a couple of examples, but just think through what might apply to you and don't worry if they don't all apply to you. You'll still have a very strong application um, regardless of whether or not you hit all four pieces of this urgency piece. And then the lesson plan feasibility scoring works similar to the urgency, where if you're able to detail your goals and what skills will be gained, you'll get 4 points right away. You've demonstrated that you have a succinct and clear lesson plan. All right, good to go. And you've checked all the boxes. Everyone here is going to get at least 2 points, so you can check boxes. So we're really trying to make this not about who's the best writer on the planet, but it's really just, are you clearly able to articulate yourself? And we're here to help make that happen if you need that. So any questions about the evaluation criteria before I open the floor to some questions? Okay. Good. So I'll bring it back here to just sort of our main takeaways. So in 2025, there's going to be 4 teams who each get a $3,500 award. That award can go either to the apprentice or the mentor, depending on what you've agreed upon. And you can distribute it, do whatever you want with it. We don't follow up exactly how you spend that money. We're here as an organization to assist all applicants. We're not the ones who are grading or scoring, so we really encourage you to reach out for assistance. Please double check and read both the eligibility and guideline documents. And with a written response, consider each question, answer every bullet point, right size your project plan, choose something that's appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish and don't try to set over ambitious goals. Demonstrate your ties and support of community all throughout the application. That will make it quite strong. And your application is scored against the criteria, not against other applicants. So really consider that you're not competing against anyone else in the room. You're really you just there with your rubric and that's it. So, and at the end of the day, the way folks are chosen is with consideration of the score that they got on with the evaluation criteria. And then there's also consideration for being able to serve the broader Oregon communities. So if OFN has funded a particular art form or tradition 4 years in a row, it might be less likely that that particular tradition is funded a 5th year in a row. So there's certain things that are kind of outside of your control, but we really encourage you to apply regardless and ask us questions if you have any concerns around that. And then lastly, please do submit early if you want that feedback. Every applicant who submitted early has a much stronger application afterwards. It really is worth it. And we've felt disappointed, or not disappointed, but just we've felt for applicants in the past who haven't done that because they have really good projects. It just wasn't it just wasn't presented quite as strongly, and so the panel chose not to fund it. So we just don't want you to be in that position. Yeah. So do you have any questions for me before we get going?
Yeah. Um, I'd love to ask just about the demonstration of work.
Yeah.
Uh, in our case, um, part of why we're applying for this is because we haven't had the funds to like really dedicate to learning
Yeah.
this particular craft. Um, and we're musicians, so we have a lot of music around and we know a couple Irish songs, but there's not like um, a lot of proficiency in Shenno singing specifically. So I'm wondering like what they're looking for in terms of demonstration of work.
Like the public performance is what you're referencing, or
No, no, I'm talking about on the
In the
application, um, the uh, I forget what it's called, but there was a spot.
samples or what you've done before. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good question. And many apprentices haven't had the opportunity to delve deeply into the exact art form that's being proposed. So my recommendation would be to show quality pieces of work that are adjacent to um, the project you're going to be working on. And th those work samples should demonstrate your readiness for this project. So like we had an applicant a while back who was going to study saddle making. And the work samples they provided were of like pretty simple leatherworking projects. And our panel was concerned that they weren't actually really ready to make a saddle. So if there is more disparity between where you're at and where you hope to be, just in other places in the application, make sure to articulate why you and your mentor feel that yes, you are ready, even though the work sample might feel a little like adjacent rather than direct. I hope that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
I can't remember where I read it in the application or the guidelines, but there was a part of maybe the project plan that there's like a display of work following the project. Is
Mhm.
that correct?
Yeah,
And how do we go about answering that exactly? Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
Are you referencing the public presentation piece?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like a required component of the entire project is that when you've completed your work between mentor and apprentice, that you bring that work to the public to say, hey, here's the thing we did. This is really cool. And that the public can be defined in many ways. That can mean just within your community. It could be like a grouping of people where you demonstrate your embroidery, or you just show it, or maybe you have a workshop and you demonstrate like very hands-on, how the process goes, or maybe you just want to have a talk to talk about what happened. Or you can have a public presentation open to the general public because some people want, to invite others outside of the community to learn about what you do. It seems natural to folks who are like musicians because you're on stage already. That's kind of what you do with your performance. But if you're someone who does a material craft, you have to think or consider a little bit more about how that might work. And if you're having a hard time coming up with that between mentor and apprentice, you can let us know. You don't need to have that piece of it entirely figured out when you apply. We just hope that you kind of have an idea of how that might work. And oftentimes awardees kind of develop how their public presentation is going to work as their apprenticeship project goes on. Because you're like, oh yeah, like this is how it's going versus how we thought it was going to go, and this is what we feel comfortable presenting at this time. And yeah, I hope that's a helpful answer.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Mhm. Burial or Shweta, do you have any other thoughts or comments?
I might say something about how we can present our work.
Mhm.
From my own experience, that I did many workshops, like in within my community. I live in Milwaukee, Oregon, and I tried to make like workshops in the public library, uh, more than one public library. Sometimes in the festivals, like we have the Arab Festival every year in September, which also we demonstrate our work, and people would get to learn about us.
Mm.
So يعني sometimes like some organization or they call us and they call me. They wanted to show
Mm.
your art to our student. Sometimes from our community, sometimes not from our community. Maybe the elderly homes sometimes like to see many kinds of art. They are interested to learn and to see. So all the time, most of the times, like it's voluntarily. I go voluntarily and show them, and they try to do some embroidery
Mm.
and show them samples and the stories behind the embroidery. So it work in the community all the time. They like to see more. Mm.
Yeah, that's lovely, and that would be a perfect that's perfect for how we're imagining the public presentation to work for this project. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, and they love to hear explanation about what this kind of art would mean, what the story this kind of pattern would tell the people, and it's very interesting for
Mm.
many people, not just our people, our community. Mm.
Mm. And I will say too, something we offer since we're a program of the Museum of Natural and Cultural History here on the University of Oregon campus, we have space where if you
Mhm.
wanted to do a workshop, a show and tell, or a performance here, you wouldn't have to pay anything like that that's included. But unless there's like extra equipment that you choose to bring. But yeah, so if you're having a hard time thinking of where this might be hosted, there's space here at the university, and we can talk further about that too.
I did that before. I went to the university to Eugene,
Nice.
and I had something like that, workshops or just display or put a few items from my work in the museum in the same university. There are lots of things that I did in the past in the same the Oregon University
Mm,
in Eugene. Yeah,
that's really neat. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Mm.
Well, does anyone have any final thoughts or questions or reflections from our chat today?
I'd
Good.
just like to say thank you so much for taking out the time and going through all this.
Of
Thank you.
course. Of course. Thank you for coming. And yeah, we really hope to see all of you in the future and in your application materials, and please do follow up and let us know how we can assist you. We're expecting there could be quite a few folks applying this year, so which is exciting. But yeah, we just want to make sure that you have a strong application. So, all right. Well, until next time, be well. Take care of yourself, and please do reach out if you need any help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good luck, everybody.
Great to meet you all. Thanks.